Hi, I'm John Yao. I'm the CEO of Team Secret, and I basically run everything that's related to the Team Secret brand worldwide. So everything that touches our brand, our community, our fans, sponsors, our teams, our staff, and all of our activities under the Team Secret umbrella. I met Puppey at I think 2017 or so. Around that time, they were having some struggles on the business side of things. Things weren't going all that well. And for me personally, I've been a strategy consultant for the last 12 years at that point in time. So I had a lot of experience over a vast variety of different companies. Probably worked for 100 different companies over my career. At that point, for me personally, I wanted to do something for myself. As opposed to working for a larger company. And because I had all this experience working with all these different companies of different sizes, I felt that I could do anything really. And so, gaming was really always interesting for me. And it was kind of luck that I ran into Puppey. And then they were having some issues on the business side, which, as a friend or just someone that he knew and he could ask questions with, I started interacting with him, just, giving some advice here and there, just sharing my perspective on things. And then we said, okay, well, if you're having all these issues and, the Team Secret fan base seemed to be, something exciting, right? The business side wasn't very significant at the time, but the fan base was quite exciting. There was a electric energy behind it, people were like, oh, Team Secret, show up to watch them play, buy their shirt and everything. So I was like, oh, I can build something around this. I think we can make a business out of this. So he gave me the company, and here we are 4 years later. I mean, the company structure is that Puppey is a co-owner in the company, but he's a passive co-owner, I would say. So I turned to him for advice on a lot of things, especially when it comes to talent management, because he's a pro player. So he understands pro players, how they think, what they need, better than I would. So I turned to him for a lot of advice on these types of things. But on the business side, he lets me do my thing, right? So we recognize each other's strengths, and we recognize areas where we need to just let the other person take point. And so it's been pretty fruitful so far. Everything that we have done up to today has been, I would say, 4 years in the making. We haven't really done things randomly. We built a strategy 4 years ago, and we have been fulfilling that strategy ever since. When you first came aboard, I said, okay, we are a very strong European team, a Dota team. We have a pretty good fan base, a very exciting fan base. We can 10x that fan base, and my vision is to be an organization that covers the world. I mean, we want to be a global organization. We don't want to just be sitting in one region. Not that there's anything wrong with it, right? There are plenty of organizations out there that do quite well sitting in focusing either on a single country or even a single region. But for us, our vision was to be global, right? And then when I said, okay, we want to be global, it doesn't mean everywhere in the world because it's just too broad, right? You don't have the resources to cover everywhere. So global to us means let's do something significant out west, which is Europe, and let's do something significant out east, which would be Southeast Asia. And we saw we thought the fan base in Southeast Asia, we already had a lot of fans because of Dota, for instance. So it was a good base to build off of, and the growth rate and the engagement of the fans in Southeast Asia was really strong. So we said, okay, so out west we're going to focus on Europe, and out east we're going to focus on Southeast Asia, and that's how we came about building all these pieces in Southeast Asia to what we are today. I think we didn't choose to go US because out west we already had Europe, so we thought that Europe was a position of strength for us, so we're just going to continue building out Europe. And we didn't choose China, even though I am Chinese, because we thought that the market was too many barriers to entry, I would say, because a lot of the global games, sometimes they will play a different flavor of that game, like PUBG Mobile, for instance, right? In China, they play a different flavor of that game. Still, PUBG Mobile is a little bit different. It's not like the global version, right? Like there's specific games that do really, really well in China that are not released worldwide, and vice versa. So to us, to have the global connection, to be able to connect with like Europe, for instance, we needed to get into a market where the games are consistent, the esports ecosystem is, there's bridges where you can go in between like very easily, and so Southeast Asia made the most sense. We're just giving away all of our secrets today. No. I'm very happy to talk about our strategy because I firmly believe, and it's actually also played out, that if I tell you exactly what I've done and what we've done and what we are about to do, I'd say a lot of organizations still can't replicate it. And it's a little bit like, strategy is a little bit like item builds in game, right? So if you are a pro player and you watch somebody else do this item build, right? And it's a winning item build. If you don't have a concept of why he did that item build and when is appropriate to use that item build and how to counter that item build, what are the weaknesses of that item build, then even by copying that item build, you don't necessarily achieve the same results or the same success. And so strategy is very much like that. When we look at games, we look at first player base, right? So it has to have an exciting player base, it has to be a growing game, it has to be large enough to sustain some sort of viewership, right? Because everybody who plays a game is not necessarily going to be a viewer of esports for that game. So you have to have a big enough base in order to sustain viewership for esports. Second is the game has to be fun, that we think it can be a significant esport. There are some games where it's extremely fun to play, but really terrible to watch. And then there are some games that are really terrible to play, but really fun to watch. And so we want to make sure that the esport is actually fun to watch and engaging. And then the third thing is like we look for global games, right? So PUBG with Tencent backing and everything, the World Championship has been in Dubai, it's been in Southeast Asia, like they move different tournaments in different regions of the world. There's like teams from all over that are participating. We like that. So a lot of the Tencent games, a lot of the Riot games, we're very, very high on. And that's actually one of the reasons why we have not chosen MLBB to get into yet. A lot of people think I have something against MLBB, which is not true. I mean, I made a statement before, and I think it's actually a fair statement, right? Which is, if you are a organization that is focused on Southeast Asia, and in particular Philippines and Indonesia, then you need to have an MLBB team. There's just no way around it, right? It's like the biggest esport in those two countries, biggest viewership and everything. But if you're in one of the other countries, or if you're a more global brand, then it may not make sense for you at this point in time, given the MLBB demographics. And so like for us, it just doesn't make sense at this time. And doesn't mean that we will never get into it. It just means that for right now, it's not a good fit for what we want to do. And I think the game itself is like, the viewership is tremendous, right? There's no denying that. The viewership is tremendous. It gets very strong viewership, but it's a strong peak viewership, but very, very narrow base. It's like focused in specific countries, right? Where it's like 80% of viewership comes from like these two countries. What we prefer is, viewership is great, but we're okay with like lower peak viewership, but wider base. I think it's a promising sign, but I don't think we're quite there yet, because it still remains to be seen like what the breakdown of that viewership is, right? So like, yeah, third place America, like how many viewers came from the US, right? Like the Twitch stream was, it was still not very high, maybe even smaller than what Wild Rift was, like in year zero. So I think it still remains to be seen like the breakdown of the viewership, and I follow it, right? So I'm always looking for new opportunities for Team Secret, whatever makes sense for our brand. And if viewership in other regions starts to increase, then it might make sense one day. But I don't think we're quite there yet. But having a team outside of Philippines or Indonesia be competitive is certainly a good sign. I think as a global esports brand, you can be a top 3 global esports brand, and you don't need to be in every single game, right? And we don't aim to be in every single game. But I think a good number is like 6 to 8, something like that. It's a good mixture. It's a good mix of different games, and spread out wherever you think you can be successful. So not necessarily all in C. I think 4 in C is fine, but we could easily be 6 in C. or we can be 5-3, 3 in Europe or something like that. So we always look at ways to get into certain games, and it really depends on the best region for that game. So for instance, we were looking at games like Rocket League, for instance. Rocket League is doing quite well as a game, and it's pretty fun to play. It's easy to understand, right? I think for Rocket League, it's actually better to be in Europe because it's a more significant market. You get better engagement, better viewership, right? And we can easily have a team in Southeast Asia, but I think it's right now it's a lesser market as compared to Europe for that particular game. So whenever we start a new team or do some significant investment or development, I am very hands-on. So I am on the ground. So when we started in Vietnam, I was in Vietnam for a month and a half, right? When we were starting up in Malaysia, I was in Malaysia for a month and a half, right? On the ground, overseeing things. I like to be very hands-on. And so like Philippines, I'll be in Philippines next year in 2022, right? Because we're building some infrastructure there. We're gonna have a team house there, all that stuff. So it's important for me to be there. But in terms of Singapore is a great hub. And it's a great place to be, and there's a lot of business activity, and it's a very friendly place when it comes to esports business. The government is friendly, and so it made sense for me to relocate here because not only can you do a lot of great business in Singapore, but also you can hop to all these neighboring countries like quite easily. Yeah, so for me, I made made kind of a big life decision to move out to Singapore about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I haven't regretted it. I think Singapore is really great. When I was living in the US, a lot of my calls were in Southeast Asia time anyway. So I was like, all right, I'm taking all these conference calls in Southeast Asia, so I should just move to that time zone. But Singapore's been really great. I think that when I consciously made the decision to move over here, it was for the purpose of building a small headquarters here. I think for us, our philosophy is not to have heavy infrastructure. Because we are a digital business, there's no reason to burden ourselves with a lot of heavy infrastructure, right? It will only slow us down and it'll only increase our carrying costs from a business standpoint. So without heavy infrastructure, we can still build a small headquarters here and still have as many staff as we want, right? Because a lot of, even in COVID times, working from home is sort of the norm, and our business is worldwide and it's digital anyway. So working from home is, natural for us. And I'm looking forward to expanding our presence here, hiring people, and continuing to build out our presence in Southeast Asia from our Singapore ground zero. When we set out to do crypto, I said, we're not gonna sell any NFTs, we're not gonna promote any coins, we're not gonna do any of that stuff, right? That's like kind of very low-hanging fruit. Like this is just like the very easy stuff you can do, right? When you think about like esports and cryptocurrency, like most of the organizations out there will be like, oh, let's just go sell some coins, fan tokens, or let's just list some NFTs so we can get some money, right? We're not gonna do any of that. My partnership with Uniswap is we're going to develop educational content to educate and bring visibility into concepts around cryptocurrency like decentralization, right? Like why is decentralization good? Concepts like maybe even like play to earn, like what are some of the economic models behind play to earn? These types of things, right? That are not specifically trying to sell you anything. So when I say we're going to get deeper into crypto partnerships, we're going to do things in our own way that makes sense, that will actually have utility, and that I think will bring, hopefully some benefit to our fan community. Yeah, so the first question is how much investment into the Southeast Asia region? Millions, right? It's in the millions. Way higher than 1 million. So in the millions. And then the second one is revenue generation. Revenue generation is much like other esports brands, right? We have tournament revenue, we have licensing revenue, we have brand revenue, we sell merchandise, right? There's a number of different revenue streams that come in. We have sponsorships. So it's very much the traditional avenues of revenue generation. But I think we have a tremendous advantage because one, we're global, and two, our brand is actually doing quite well. So we're able to get a lot of licensing revenue, brand revenue, and sponsorships because of that. not just C-Plans, but I think like overall the brand, we want to be the #1 esports brand in the world. Right? That's always been our goal, and we know we're not going to do it in 5 years, but maybe 10 we can do it. We've grown from almost nothing. I would say a very small dedicated fan base, not nothing, but we've grown to be one of the maybe top 10-ish brands in the world globally, and we want to be #1. So I think that's where we want to be, and Southeast Asia is a big part of that.